The warning klaxons of the salvage runner cut through space like screams. But Corporal Jonah Reeve couldn't understand what his crewmates were shouting. His translator had been sparking and dying for 3 days now, reducing their panicked voices to meaningless static. He watched through the viewport as his teammates, Rodriguez, Kim, and old Peterson, scrambled into their escape pods with the desperation of men fleeing death itself. "Wait," he called, but they were already jettisoning, leaving him alone with the hulking mass of Kepler station rotating slowly against the star field. The derelict research facility had been abandoned for over a century, its dark corridors promising salvage worth a fortune. Now his crew was fleeing like the devil himself lived in those twisted metal halls. Jonah's scarred hands moved over the controls, the burn marks on his face reflecting in the console's glow. 3 years of combat in, the Outer Rim had taught him that most fears were just shadows, and shadows couldn't hurt you. His translator crackled once more before dying completely, leaving him in blessed silence. The docking was rough, the station's automated systems were failing, but he managed to seal the airlock. The moment he stepped into Kepler station's main corridor, he understood why his crew had fled. The air itself felt wrong, charged with something that made his skin crawl. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, and the walls were covered in what looked like claw marks, as if something massive had torn through the metal like paper. Bodies lay scattered throughout the corridors, not fresh, but not quite skeletal either. Their expressions were frozen in terror, faces twisted in screams that would never end. Whatever had killed them had done so with surgical precision and creative cruelty. "Well, this is cheerful," Jonah muttered, stepping over a corpse that had been split cleanly in half. His voice echoed strangely in the empty halls, bouncing back, distorted. He'd seen worse during the war, barely. But there was something about this place that felt fundamentally wrong. He followed the trail of destruction deeper into the station, past laboratories filled with shattered equipment and research notes that spoke of Project Untouched and biological warfare evolution. The further he went, the more the temperature seemed to drop until his breath misted in the recycled air. The trail led to the station's core, a massive chamber that had once housed the main reactor. Now it served as a tomb, filled with hundreds of corpses arranged in almost ritualistic patterns. And in the center, surrounded by the dead, sat a figure that made Jonah's breath catch. She was humanoid, but clearly not human, with pale skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Her hair was white as starlight, falling in waves around shoulders that were too perfect, too symmetrical. When she looked up at his approach, her eyes were the deep purple of nebulae, ancient and alien and utterly without warmth. She wore the remnants of what might have once been a laboratory gown, now torn and stained with things Jonah didn't want to identify. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to flee like his crewmates had. This was Velis the Untouched. He was sure of it now. The stories spoke of a weapon that had escaped containment, a bioengineered killer that could end civilizations with a thought. Ships changed course rather than risk encountering her. Entire worlds went dark when rumors suggested she was near, but Jonah had never been good at following instincts. "Hey there," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. She tilted her head, studying him with the clinical interest of a scientist examining a new specimen. "You look like you could use some company." He reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar, tossing it gently to land near her feet. She stared at it as if it were an alien artifact. "It's food," he explained, settling down cross-legged about 10 feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to run if necessary. "Not great food, mind you. Tastes like recycled cardboard, but it'll keep you alive." He unwrapped his own bar and took a bite, making an exaggerated face of disgust. Though honestly, after being in here with all these corpses for who knows how long, you might prefer the smell of my cooking. For the first time in what might have been centuries, Velis the Untouched blinked in what looked like surprise. Jonah grinned, the expression transforming his scarred features. "Yeah, I know. Terrible joke. But hey, at least now you know the worst thing about me up front." He gestured around the chamber of death. "Besides, figured the conversation couldn't get much darker than our current decor." She hadn't killed him yet. That was something. 3 weeks had passed since Kepler station, and Jonah was beginning to think he'd imagined the whole encounter. His salvage runs had returned to their usual routine, dangerous but predictable work along the frontier. His crew had been reassigned, after filing reports about catastrophic system failures that had forced their evacuation. Only Jonah knew the truth about what they'd really fled from. He was alone on the bridge of his new ship, the Wanderer, when the proximity alarms began. Screaming, Lieutenant Hayes, his new partner, rushed in looking panicked. "Corporal, we've got multiple contacts approaching fast. Configuration suggests Valian pirates, at least 6 ships." Jonah's hands flew over the controls, but the Wanderer was a salvage vessel, not a warship. "How long until they're in firing range?" 2 minutes, maybe less. The pirates had been growing bolder lately, hitting salvage crews in dead space where no one could respond to distress calls. Jonah keyed the emergency beacon, knowing help wouldn't arrive in time. "This is Pirate Lord Krex," a guttural voice crackled over the comm. "Surrender your cargo and prepare to be boarded. Resist and die." Through the viewport, Jonah could see the pirate ships closing in, sleek predators against the starfield. He was reaching for the surrender beacon when something impossible happened. The lead pirate ship simply stopped. Not slowed, not damaged, stopped as if it had hit an invisible wall. Then it began to crumple, metal screaming as unseen forces compressed it like a tin can. The crew's death screams cut across all frequencies before being abruptly silenced. "What the hell?" Hayes breathed. The second ship suffered a different fate. It split apart with surgical precision, as if invisible claws had dissected it piece by piece. The remaining 4 ships opened fire wildly at empty space, their weapons lighting up the void in brilliant flashes that illuminated nothing. One by one they died, not destroyed by weapons or explosions, but methodically dismantled by something that moved between them like death itself. In less than 3 minutes, 6 pirate ships had become expanding clouds of debris. "Corporal," Hayes whispered, his face pale with terror. "Look at the scanner. There, just at the edge of sensor range, was a single life sign. Humanoid. Familiar. She's following you," Hayes said, his voice barely audible. "Dear God, Velis the Untouched is following you." Jonah stared at the scanner readout, feeling something warm and strange bloom in his chest. She had protected him. The galaxy's most feared weapon had chosen to shield him from harm. "Jonah," a voice whispered through the comm system, soft, melodic, speaking his name with careful precision. She had learned to use their technology, had been listening to their communications. "Hello, Velis," he said quietly, ignoring Hayes's shocked expression. "Thank you." Silence stretched across the void, then, "You stayed." 2 words, but they carried the weight of centuries. She had been alone for so long that a simple act of remaining in her presence had become something precious. "Beyond measure, of course I stayed," Jonah replied. "We were having a conversation." When they docked at Outpost 7 for resupply, Commander Briggs was waiting with a full security detail. Word had spread about the pirate attack and its impossible resolution. The commander was a career military man with gray hair and suspicious eyes. "Corporal Reeve, you're to be debriefed immediately. The entity following your ship represents a clear and present danger to station security." "She's not an entity," Jonah said firmly. "She's a person, and she's not dangerous to anyone who doesn't threaten others first. That thing has killed millions. Those pirates would have killed us. She saved our lives." Briggs's jaw tightened. "Stand down, Corporal. That's an order." As security moved to escort Jonah away, every light on the station began to flicker. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in seconds, and a sound like distant thunder rolled through the corridors. In the observation deck windows, a pale figure materialized from empty space. Velis, floating in vacuum as easily as walking on solid ground. Her purple eyes found Jonah through the transparisteel, and her expression was one of barely contained fury. The station's hull began to groan under invisible pressure. "Let him go," her voice echoed through every speaker on the station. filled with an ancient power that made hardened soldiers drop to their knees in primal terror. Now. Briggs released Jonah immediately, his hands shaking. "Stand down. Everyone stand down." The pressure vanished. The lights steadied, and Velis tilted her head in what might have been approval before fading back into space. Later, alone in his quarters, Jonah spoke to the empty air. "You don't have to protect me from everyone, you know." "Yes," came her voice from the walls themselves, soft and certain. "I do." She had chosen him, claimed him as something worth protecting. And despite every rational thought telling him to be terrified, Jonah found himself smiling. The engine failure couldn't have come at a worse time. 3 days out from the nearest station, Jonah's ship began losing power and cascading system failures. Emergency protocols kicked in, but the Wanderer was dying around him. His only option was a small mining colony on Kepler's edge, barely more than a few prefab domes clinging to a barren asteroid. "Colony Control, this is Salvage Ship Wanderer requesting emergency landing," Jonah transmitted as he fought to keep the ship stable. "Copy that, Wanderer. Bay 3 is clear for emergency approach." The landing was rough but successful. As Jonah powered down the failing systems, he could sense Velis nearby, a presence that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat over the past month. She never appeared when others could see her, but he always knew she was there. Cade, the colony's medic, met him at the landing bay. He was a tall man with kind eyes and gentle hands, the sort of person who chose to help others on the galaxy's edge rather than seek profit in the core worlds. "Heard you had some trouble out there," Cade said, helping Jonah with his gear. "Engine trouble's been common lately. Something about solar interference affecting the newer drive cores." "How long for repairs?" "Week, maybe 2. Depends on what. Parts we can fabricate." Cade paused, studying Jonah's face with professional interest. "Those are some serious scars you're carrying, friend." "War?" Jonah's hand unconsciously moved to the burn marks that twisted the left side of his face. "Outer Rim conflict. Plasma grenade took out half my squad. Must cause you pain. I could help with that. We've got some advanced medical equipment here." "Mining accidents, you know." That evening, in the small guest quarters Cade had provided, Jonah sat alone with his thoughts. The colony was peaceful, quiet in a way that space never was. For the first time in weeks, he felt truly safe. "You can show yourself," he said to the empty room. "There's no one else here." The air shimmered, and Velis materialized beside the window. In the dim light, her otherworldly beauty was even more striking. Skin like polished marble, hair that seemed to catch starlight, eyes deep enough to drown in. But it was the loneliness in those eyes that made Jonah's heart ache. "Your face," she said, her voice carrying new emotions, concern, curiosity. "It causes you pain." "Sometimes," he admitted. "Phantom nerve damage. The doctor said it would fade, but—" She moved closer, and Jonah felt his breath catch. This near, he could see the incredible detail of her bioengineered perfection, and the sadness that perfection couldn't hide. "May I?" she asked, raising one pale hand. Jonah nodded, not trusting his voice. Her fingers touched his scars with impossible gentleness, and warmth spread through the damaged tissue. The constant low-level pain he'd carried for 3 years simply vanished. "How?" he whispered. "I was made to kill," she said, her hand still resting against his cheek. "But I can heal too. I was never allowed to use that part of myself." Her touch lingered, and Jonah found himself leaning into it. "Who made you, Velis?" Pain flickered across her features. "The collective. A species that saw war as art, suffering as beauty. They wanted the perfect weapon, something that could end conflicts before they began. They succeeded too well. What happened to them? I killed them all." The words were spoken without emotion, but Jonah could see the weight they carried. "When I learned what I was, what I had been used for, I chose to end it. I have been alone ever since." "You're not alone now." She looked at him with wonder, as if the concept was foreign. "You are not afraid of me." Should I be? Everyone else is. They see only the weapon, the death I carry. But you? Her thumb traced along his jaw. You offered me food. You made jokes. You saw me. The space between them seemed to compress, charged with possibility. Jonah reached up to cover her hand with his own. You're more than what they made you to be, he said. You choose your own actions now. I choose to protect you, she whispered. I choose to stay near you. Is that wrong? No, Jonah said, his voice rough with emotion. It's not wrong at all. When she kissed him, it was with the hesitant wonder of someone experiencing gentleness for the first time. Her lips were soft and warm, tasting of starlight and possibilities. Jonah responded carefully, letting her set the pace, showing her that touch could be tender instead of violent. They broke apart slowly, and Velis rested her forehead against his. I have never felt anything like this, she confessed. This warmth, this belonging. It's called love, Jonah said simply. And I'm feeling it too. Under the alien stars visible through the small window, she curled against him. The galaxies, most feared weapon seeking comfort in the arms of a scarred human salvager. For the first time in her existence, Velis felt safe enough to truly rest. Elder Tam found them the next morning, asleep in each other's arms, and simply smiled. Some bonds, he murmured to himself, transcend all understanding. The repairs took exactly 2 weeks. Neither of them wanted to leave. The news broke across the galaxy like wildfire. Human tames the untouched. Holovids showed grainy footage of Jonah and Velis together at the mining colony, their intimate moments captured by some hidden surveillance drone. Within hours, every major news network was running the story. And within days, the political implications had everyone from admirals to ambassadors calling for action. Nexus Prime, the galaxy's largest trading hub and political center, became their destination whether they wanted it or not. Admiral Cross intercepted their ship personally, surrounding them with an entire fleet. Corporal Reeve, by order of the Galactic Defense Council, you and your companion will submit to immediate custody for debriefing. Cross's voice crackled over the comm. The Admiral was a decorated war hero with silver hair and steel eyes, a man who saw everything through the lens of military strategy. Jonah looked at Velis, who materialized beside him on the bridge. Her expression was carefully neutral, but he could feel the dangerous energy building around her. It's okay, he said quietly. We'll go, but together. Together, she agreed, her hand finding his. The debriefing facility on Nexus Prime was more like a prison. Sterile white walls, energy barriers, armed guards at every checkpoint. They were separated the moment they arrived, despite Jonah's protests. Ambassador Quinn, representing the Coalition of Outer Worlds, was waiting in the interrogation room. The reptilian diplomat's scales shifted color with anxiety as he studied Jonah through the transparasteel barrier. Do you understand what you've done? Quinn hissed. That creature has the power to end civilizations. She's followed you across the galaxy, leaving destruction in her wake. She's protecting me, Jonah said firmly. And the only destruction has been pirates and other threats. For now. But what happens when she decides you're threatened by something larger? A planet, a system, an entire species, entire. Director Vale entered then. A cold woman in black who represented the intelligence division. Her augmented eyes glowed with data streams as she analyzed Jonah. We've been monitoring your relationship, she said without preamble. Bioscans indicate unusual hormonal and neurological patterns. We believe she may be influencing your mind, creating artificial feelings of attachment. You're wrong, Jonah said, anger flaring. What I feel is real. Prove it, Vale challenged. Submit to neural scanning. Let us verify that your emotions are genuine and not bioengineered manipulation. Meanwhile, in another facility across the station, Velis sat in a containment cell designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. Energy fields hummed around her, but she made no move to escape. She could hear Jonah's heartbeat through the station's walls, could sense his distress. Admiral Cross entered her cell, flanked by soldiers in power armor. "I fought in the Kepler Wars," he said. "Saw what your kind could do. Entire worlds scoured clean, populations reduced to ash in minutes." "I am not my creators," Velis replied, her voice carrying harmonics that made the soldiers step back involuntarily. "No? Then prove it. Submit to our control. Let us study you, learn from you. Become the weapon you were designed to be, but for the right side. I choose my own path now." Cross smiled coldly. "Then you choose war. Because that's what will happen if you remain free. Every species in the galaxy will unite against the threat you represent. Billions will die because of your selfish desires." It was then that the assassination attempt began. Director Vale had arranged it carefully. A rogue faction claiming responsibility, quantum charges placed throughout the station targeting both Jonah and Velis simultaneously. The goal was simple: eliminate the threat before it could grow larger. The explosions rocked Nexus Prime, emergency klaxons screaming as entire sections lost atmosphere. In his interrogation room, Jonah was thrown against the wall as the station shuddered around him. Emergency barriers sealed the corridors, trapping thousands of civilians. Velis felt his pain through their bond, felt his life force flickering as debris rained down around him. The careful control she'd maintained shattered like glass. The containment field meant to hold her didn't simply fail. It ceased to exist, the very concept of barriers becoming meaningless in her presence. She moved through the station like death itself, her bioengineered form adapting instantly to the vacuum of space, to the heat of plasma fires, to the crushing pressure of structural collapse. She found Jonah buried under rubble, blood streaming from a head wound, his breathing shallow. The sight of him hurt unleashed something primal in her, not the calculated weapon her creators had designed, but something far more dangerous. A being with infinite power motivated by love and fury. The station's outer hull began to crack. Emergency power failed as Velis's presence overwhelmed every system. In the command center, Admiral Cross watched in horror as gravitational anomalies tore through entire decks. "Evacuate the station," he ordered. "All hands abandon ship." But Velis wasn't interested in destroying the station. She wanted the ones who had hurt Jonah. Director Vale died first, her augmented body simply shutting down as Velis rewrote her biology. The rogue faction responsible for the bombs followed, each death precisely calculated for maximum suffering. When she finally returned to Jonah, cradling his unconscious form against her chest, the once mighty Nexus Prime was a broken shell drifting in space. Its population fled, its power shattered. "I'm sorry," she whispered against his hair. "I couldn't control it. I couldn't let them hurt you." Jonah stirred in her arms, his eyes focusing on her face. "Did we win?" Despite everything, she smiled. "We survived. Together." But as their commandeered ship fled into deep space, they both knew the galaxy would never let them rest now. They were fugitives, outlaws, lovers against the universe itself. And somehow, that felt exactly right. 6 months after Nexus Prime, they found sanctuary in the most unlikely place, a hidden world called Haven's Rest, discovered by accident when their ship's navigation system failed during a routine jump. The planet hung in space like a forgotten jewel, its continents green and unscarred, its oceans blue as Earth's ancient seas. No settlements, no orbital stations, no signs of sentient life, Jonah reported, scanning the readings. "It's like the galaxy forgot this place existed, or it was hidden," Velis said, her hand resting on his shoulder as they studied the planet below. "Some places call to those who need them." They built their home in a valley beside a crystal-clear lake, surrounded by mountains that seemed to touch the stars. Jonah used his salvaging skills to construct a small but comfortable dwelling, while Velis learned to tend a garden, her bioengineered abilities allowing her to coax life from the alien soil with unprecedented success. For the first time in either of their lives, they knew peace. "I never thought I'd be domestic," Jonah said one evening, watching Velis prepare dinner from their garden's harvest. The simple act of her moving around their kitchen, humming softly to herself, filled him with a contentment he'd never imagined possible. Domestic, she repeated, testing the word. I like this word. It means belonging. It means home, he said, pulling her into his arms. It means family. It means forever. She melted against him, and their kiss was soft and deep, filled with the promise of endless tomorrows. When they made love that night, it was with the desperate tenderness of two souls who had found their missing piece in each other. But forever, it seemed, was not something the universe was willing to grant them. Captain Elena Voss arrived 3 months later, her sleek ship cutting through Haven's Rest atmosphere like a knife. Jonah recognized her immediately, a former adversary from the Outer Rim conflicts who had become something approaching a friend over the years. Jonah, she called as she stepped from her ship, her expression grim. We need to talk. Velis materialized beside him, her posture protective. Voss stopped short, her hand moving instinctively to her weapon before she caught herself. Easy, Jonah said. Elena's not here to fight. Are you, Elena? No, Voss said carefully. I'm here to warn you. The collective is coming. The word hit Velis like a physical blow. Her creators, the ancient species that had engineered her as the ultimate weapon, were supposed to be extinct, destroyed by her own hand centuries ago. That's impossible, Velis whispered. I killed them all. You killed their homeworld, Voss corrected. But they were explorers, scientists. They had research stations, colony ships, hidden facilities throughout the galaxy. And they've been rebuilding. She activated a holographic display showing ship configurations unlike anything in the current galactic catalog. Biomechanical vessels that pulsed with organic life. Weapons that defied conventional physics. They call themselves the architects of perfection now, Voss continued. And they want their greatest creation back. They're 3 days out, maybe less. Jonah felt Velis tremble beside him, centuries of carefully controlled fear threatening to overwhelm her. He took her hand, anchoring her to the present. We'll face them together, he said simply. You don't understand, Voss protested. These aren't pirates or station security. They created her. They know her weaknesses, her limitations. They've had centuries to prepare countermeasures. Then we'll have to be smarter than they are, Jonah replied. Won't we, love? Velis looked at their home, at the garden she'd tended, at the life they'd built together. Then she looked at Jonah, and something fundamental shifted in her expression. Yes, she said, her voice carrying new harmonics. Not the weapon her creators had built, but something they could never have imagined. We will. The collective arrived with 12 ships, each one a masterpiece of biological engineering. Their leader, who called himself the Prime Architect, broadcast his demands across all frequencies. Weapon designation Velis, you will return to your creators immediately. Your unauthorized modifications and emotional contamination will be corrected. Comply, and your pet human will be granted a swift death. The response came not from Velis, but from Jonah. This is Corporal Jonah Reeve, Galactic Defense Corps. Velis is not a weapon. She's a person. She's made her choice, and that choice is to stay with me. If you want her, you'll have to go through me. Amusing, the Prime Architect replied. One human against the might of the collective. Your species' arrogance continues to. The transmission cut off as the lead ship simply stopped existing, not destroyed, not damaged, erased from reality as if it had never been. I am not your weapon, Velis said, her voice carrying across space itself. I am not your creation. I am Velis, and I choose love over fear. What followed was not a battle, but a demonstration. The collective had created her to be the perfect weapon, but they had never anticipated what she might become when motivated by love rather than duty. She moved between their ships like a force of nature, not destroying but transforming, turning their biomechanical vessels into harmless gardens, their weapons into flowering vines. When it was over, the surviving collective ships fled, their crews fundamentally changed by their encounter with something their science couldn't quantify, a weapon that had learned to love. Jonah found Velis floating in space above their home, her body glowing with expended energy. When she saw him, she smiled with exhaustion and triumph. "It's over," she said as he helped her inside. "They won't come back. They can't understand what I've become." "And what have you become?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Yours," she said simply. "Just as you are mine." Years later, their story would become legend. The human who tamed the untouchable, the weapon who chose love over war. But to them it was simpler than that. They had found each other in the darkness between stars, and they had chosen to build something beautiful together. In the end, that was all any love story could ever be. Two souls deciding that together was better than alone, and making that choice every day for the rest of their lives. Their home among the stars became a beacon for others like them, outcasts, refugees, beings who had been cast aside by a galaxy that couldn't understand them. And in the garden, Velis tended, children played, some human, some not, all loved. The untouched had found her touch at last, and the galaxy was more beautiful for it.